So the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory continues to be tragic. Genocide being a process, not an act, it's something that cannot be contained unless, especially when it's been inflicted through violent and destructive acts like the ones unleashed against the entire population trapped in Gaza, it cannot be undone unless it's significantly remedied. And this is not the case yet. So the effects of the genocide in the Gaza Strip for the over 2 million Palestinians trapped there will continue to be felt because of the extreme destruction, the environmental crisis that has been created, the destruction of livelihood. And I'm sure that my colleague Michael Fakhri will speak to this because he has been brilliant in exposing how the destruction of food sovereignty speaks to genocidal practices being part of a process and not acts in and of themselves. But even if no one intervenes today, if no more bombs dropped, if no more bullets are shot against the people in Gaza, the genocide will continue because there are no ways to remedy the destruction the seeds of the various forms of destruction that have been planted in Gaza. Let's not forget, genocide can be identified in two main elements. One is determination to destroy a group as such, and second, it must be understood through who the victims are. Here we are not talking we are talking of a group identified as such, the Palestinians identified as such. And this leads me to speak of the other part of this genocide. Already in October 2024, I warned the international community in New York that the genocidal violence was leaking out in the West Bank. And the violence is now as acute as ever because the elements that identified 5-6 months ago, the destruction of health infrastructure and other civilian infrastructure together with livelihood and food sovereignty, the arbitrary mass killing of Palestinians in the West Bank, and the infliction of severe bodily and mental harm through the mass arbitrary detention of Palestinians, including children, and the brutalization of the Palestinians in Israeli custody, including through systematic torture, including rape, that in some cases, like in the case of Dr. Al-Bush, have led to death. This is something that has only increased in brutality. Now we know where I was denouncing as the pursuit of the policy of realizing Greater Israel is leading to forced displacement of the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, from the West Bank. And again, while ethnic cleansing is not a crime per se, it consists, and it's been recognized as such, it might include other crimes like crimes against humanity and genocide. So Israel is destroying the Palestinian people in the pursuit of ethnic cleansing of what remains of Palestine. Last comment concerns the international legal order. Already 1 year ago, I denounced the Israeli humanitarian camouflage, the fact that Israel was not denying the violence that you had unleashed against the Palestinians. It does not deny the leveling of civilian infrastructure, the killing of Palestinians. It had justified it as supported by military necessity. Those who die are either collateral damage or military targets or human shields. And I said, this is going to lead to a new script to conduct a war that will lead us to face a world without civilians. And not even 6 months later, Israel had implemented that script in Lebanon, and now it's being exported to other places. So again, I don't know how many warnings the international community will need to receive, but the point is that we have already entered a world where what has protected us until now, although we have to recognize that the multilateral order has not served everyone equally, it's crumbling, and we will miss it very much when it's no longer there. We will miss human rights very much where we are no longer able to protect us. I know that the current US president has attracted much attention and criticism. And there are two aspects to what he brings to the fore. One is content and one is form. And clearly, I have to say that sometimes it's very often grotesque, the way he refers to people outside the US. I don't think that this is something limited to Palestine. And yeah, again, I sometimes feel that there is probably it's intentional, psychological, overwhelming, so that we and policymakers most probably don't know how to react. However, the content, while the US politics under the current administration is terrible in many ways, I have to say that when it comes to Palestine, the worsening is in the margins, if there is worsening at all, because the US has always been that lawlessness driven, international law negligence driven when it comes to Palestine. The violence that has been unleashed against the Palestinians historically, but most remarkably in the last 16 months, has been financially, militarily, economically, and politically enabled by the previous US administration. So again, we shouldn't be distracted from that. And also, people talk, media as well, tend to refer to the Trump's plan to forcibly displace the Palestinian. No, this is the Israeli plan to displace the Palestinians. And President Trump's, as its persona, is just saying that out loud. And yes, it's scary that forced displacement and other crimes are becoming overtly part of the US foreign policy. I mean, the other side of the coin is that this is the way the US has run politics vis-a-vis Palestine for a long time. And again, we shall not forget what's happening to the West Bank. The West Bank is the litmus test of the ethnic cleansing that Israel aims to do to Palestine. 40,000 people have been made homeless in 1 month. I mean, this would be on the front page of any newspaper. This should be talking on TV. Imagine if this had been done to the Israelis. The fact that policymakers and media don't pick it up is a reflex of a racial bias. I think that the danger of forced displacement of the Palestinians is real since the arrival of British boots in historical Palestine, and it has become more and more real with every passing day for the Palestinians. There has been, forced displacement has been a constant. And I know that because my contribution to scholarship is on 100 years of forced displacement of Palestinians. So I can tell you that there have been two trends: low forced displacement, low intensity forced displacement, which has been constant, and it has been implemented through decisions of taking Palestinian property piece of land by piece of land, home by home, school by school, then has escalated in three historical moments. But otherwise, it has always been constant. And we are talking of hundreds of thousands of people forcibly displaced, including from the occupied Palestinian territory, away from major instances of armed conflict. But in major instances of armed conflict, as in 1947-49, the Nakba, of whom Palestinians are all survivors one way or another. In 1967, under the fog of war, Israel forcibly displaced 350,000 plus Palestinians, destroying everything they had left behind, like in 1947, 1949, and preventing their return. This is why on the 14th of October, 2023, like 1 week after the assault, I said, this is the risk, because this is what I saw being the trend, the risk of forcible displacement of the Palestinian is real. So how to answer, and this has been the third pick. And of course, it's never a given. Israel has tried all it could to forcibly displace the Palestinians, and including, if you read Michael Fakhri's report on food sovereignty, in conjunction with another colleague's report, Pedro Arrojo, the special rapporteur of the right to water, and cartography of a genocide, the report produced by Forensic Architecture, you understand that Gaza has always been driven by this attempt to forcibly displace the Palestinians. And now it's happening. The resistance has come from the Palestinians. And I'm not talking of armed resistance. I'm talking to the fact that they stayed put, because the reenactment of the Nakba through the violence that they experienced made them feel this is the last piece of Palestine that we have, and we are not going anywhere. So this is why now many are talking of supporting migration so as to make them move voluntarily, because there is no other way and through bombing it will not work. They're going to be killed all. So this is the reality. The danger is real, but so is the Palestinian attachment to the land and resistance to the land. I'm not a media expert, but I've done quite a significant amount of reading about ethical journalism, because I had an issue with the media was covering the facts and developments in the occupied Palestinian territory since October 2023, and not because there were not enough reasons to do that, to have that critical approach before. But there are some key principles like truth and accuracy, according to which journalists should strive to give an accurate and fair account of events. And I don't think this has happened, because in many instances there has been a repetition of unverified facts, very often coming from disputed or not very credible sources. The other principle is independence. Journalists and certain media have been investigated by other journalists as not truly independent. They have masked themselves, they have hidden themselves against behind the word neutrality. But they have taken side. They have been biased in the ways they have selected facts to report on, and voices to host, and also the kind of different line of questionings and the assumptions, sometimes revealing a racial bias again in the line of questions. The other elements are really fairness and impartiality. We know now, because it's been increasingly exposed, and there are also cases where I have received complaints myself, and I've listened to and I've received, I've heard, I've spoken with journalists themselves who have been either fired, dismissed, or mistreated in their position, told not to talk about genocide, not to talk about war crimes against humanity. So there has been like a thought police in between quote unquote in the media. So I think that, as in other genocides, the role of the media will have to be investigated, because in international tribunals have exposed the role of media, for example, in enabling, in creating a conducive environment for genocidal acts, in the case of Rwanda and in the case of former Yugoslavia. What is interesting here, as I've said before, it's a case where it's not the Israeli media, or it's not the Israeli media only. It's international media, corporate media, Western media, which has taken this conduct, and it's very regrettable.